Hi, and welcome again to another episode of Live Unscripted with me, Amar Delon. Today, I'm going to bring in the guy who inspired me to have my own podcast. As a matter of fact, to mention his podcast, in the list of podcasts that I listen to is Joe Rogan, Patrick Bet-David, and then the GoodCast Show. All right. So, by the way, this podcast is recorded in the Empire Podcast Studio, where the quality that you see is the quality that you get. So, come get your podcast. Let us help you broadcast your podcast. Now on to my guest, Mr. Vinodh Rajendran.
Yeah.
All right. So how are you, bro?
I'm good, man. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on.
Of course, man. Anytime.
Yeah. So I really meant it. I mean, you're not a political figure or somebody that I need to suck up to. So when I say your podcast is good, it's really good.
Thank you. Thank you
because
very
I
much.
don't see me making any money from you anytime soon. So yeah, it's entertaining, and the guests that you bring in are powerful guests that you didn't know exist, because in Malaysia, right? When you see guests, we only see people who are famous, and we talk about celebrity gossip, which I really hate. And politicians, or we only look about the key political figures. You bring in a lot of people who are outside and who are actually making and shaping the country. Like one of the most favorite episodes that I watched was the one with Sadiq's brother,
Space
Dola.
Yeah.
Very amazing, very like, oh wow, eye-opener. And it also shows Malaysia different perspectives of the racial mix. Because right now, we are so racially segregated and separated. There's a perception like, oh, Melayu means macam ni. India means macam ni. China means macam ni. But no, you bring in guests who are truly universal and everything. Like, so, just a little backtrack. I always go in the beginning, like Star Wars. Although I hate Star Wars, I'm a big time Trekkie.
Oh my goodness.
So, right, Star Wars.
You should have told me that I wouldn't have come on.
Star Wars is fully make believe. Lightsabers, come on.
Oh yeah, because Star Trek is all belief.
Yes.
Okay, fair.
Warp speed based on Stephen Hawking's theories.
Okay.
Let's not go there.
Yeah. Whatever, man.
Live long and prosper. How did you get into this whole business of podcasting? I mean, was it an ambition since you were a kid? I want to be a radio announcer. I want to be this and that. Why this?
So it started way back when I was in primary school. I think we were in Kluang at that time, Johor. And my first...
Bangsa Johor.
Bangsa Johor.
This is the second Bangsa Johor I'm interviewing. I'm like, wow. So many of you.
So many. But the first sort of exposure into this world happened thanks to David Letterman. David Letterman, I think a lot of people are inspired. Even in the US, you find a lot of talk show hosts inspired by him. So when I saw it, I liked that industry. I liked to have my own talk show and all that. And then I grew up with people like Jeremy Paxman, BBC Hard Talk, and all these type of guys. Who else? Parkinson's, and all these different types of guys who are very different. They had their own style, their own way of doing things, right? So, but recently, I mean, and the thing is, just to paint context, I've always been talking on stage. I think I started talking on stage since I was 7. So I liked going on stage. In fact, the one very weird experience I had was when I was 12 and I went for this state level, I was representing Kluang, a state level, what's the term called? Elocution contest, public speaking contest. And I was the first in my category. Elocution, yes.
Did you win?
Yes, I did.
Wow.
Yeah,
you got elocution wrong.
Yeah, well, it tells you the quality of the judges that were there. Right? So, and I remember I was so nervous going on, because I was the first, and I was like, oh, they're going to call me soon, all that. But as soon as I went on stage, I was comfortable. I was at home. And so the same thing, I think, happens here. I'm very comfortable in, talking to people and all that. And I love talking to people. So one problem that I saw with the general and radio and broadcast environment is that, as you mentioned, they only highlight few people, right? And one group that is often forsaken is the Indian demographic. This cannot be denied. I mean, I used to see a lot of my friends, influencers, actresses, who were telling me, look, we are not getting any jobs. It's hard. They want the fair skin. They want Pan-Asian and all this kind of stuff. I, till today, cannot understand why a lot of our radio channels prioritize people with accents. I do not understand.
What kind of accents? Apu's accents?
No. Apu accents, no. Forget it.
Oh, very Chinese.
Very white. Yeah, Chinese will be there, but very white accents, right?
Sounds like, how do you do, master?
Yeah, why? It's not our culture, right? So a lot of Indian problems are not being highlighted. So I used to see people talk about it and, bring up, this issue, that issue. So I thought, instead of us complaining, why don't I create a platform where I bring on people and showcase to Malaysians that Indians don't come in one color. We are not your gangster Indian stereotype. There's so many learned, successful, very sophisticated Indians out there, Indians who are contributing to the country, Indians are contributing to society. So that was the whole impetus behind the GoodCast Show. And that's how it started. So I just said, look, I'll do it. Why not? Yeah.
Wow. What episode are you at now?
I think I'm at episode 60 something, I think.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
60 something, yeah.
And I've seen the show come a long way
Yeah,
from
definitely.
when it first started. Like, the quality is just better. The guests that you bring in and everything else. What is your biggest challenge when you started this podcast?
The biggest challenge was, of course, getting the guests. Because when you are a new podcast, and when I started, which is not so long ago, maybe just slightly over a year ago, that time the only sort of notable podcast in the space was Keluar Sekejap, right?
Right. Yes.
So, and Malaysians, the problem is but to be fair, there were many podcasts before them, like Yamcha Sessions, I forget the other guys, but there were a lot of these guys who were doing it, but they weren't really that famous yet. Also because the quality, I feel, is a bit not there.
It's just a bunch of kids screaming.
Yes, so
Stupid jokes.
Exactly. So KS sort of made podcast serious, and it opened up an entire demographic, a more mature demographic, right? So in Malaysia, we have this artist mentality, as I call it. You know, for me to come on to your platform, it has to be something. You have to be someone, which thankfully now is slowly losing its appeal. So because of that, to get guests was very tough. Like I used to get influencers maybe and all to come on, but I wanted it to be politics. I wanted it to be serious discussions. And then finally, as the numbers grew, then that problem became less a problem. So I started getting more people who I wanted, which is politicians, people, social activists, people who I can have political discussions with.
Right.
So that's one thing that I did. So this channel, although I've sort of made some mistakes here and there now, but what I've learned is that every channel needs to have its own lane. You can't be one channel and want to be on every lane. You can't do that. It's not going to work. So like, for example, that's why on this channel, if I were to put any content that is not political, it will not fly. It just won't fly. But if it's political, then it will get the numbers, definitely. So that was the only challenge I had, yeah.
Okay. So moving on forward, what is next for the GoodCast Show? I mean, where is the direction of the show?
So the next direction is, so I've set up my own podcast network, which is called V Media, which will be the parent company, which will basically, the idea is that in Malaysia, podcasting is still very new. And the beautiful thing is that we are seeing podcasting sort of slowly overtaking news media, right? So because news media people, they don't have the credibility of being honest. They are, of course, they have to abide by regulations. They have to abide by certain powers that be. They cannot. And news organizations, I feel, don't really share their opinion. They are just a billboard. You just see what is happening, right? So yes, people want to see what's happening, but they also want to get involved in the discussion. So like GoodCast Show, for example, when I bring people on, I make sure that it's a debate. So even though sometimes I know that this person may be saying something I completely disagree with, I welcome it because then it's a debate and that involves audiences. So moving forward, what the focus is going to be is that I want to convert it into a news organization. So they're going to have multiple splinter brands. So I've just started the Good Life Show, which is more lifestyle oriented, more light-hearted, comedic news sort of thing, which I'm going to have. And then also talking about the other parts in life, like everyday issues, not politics, not social, because I like to talk about different things, right? And so that's the idea. So together with GoodCast, then grow the podcast network to represent podcasters such as yourself, and then connect you all with advertisers, because that's the problem podcasters face. You eventually, everyone's doing it. You put in so much effort into it, right? Podcasting, if anyone knows, it's not something that you just sit in front of a mic and talk.
No.
There is a lot of pre-production, post-production work that happens. And eventually you'll get to a point where, and I've met podcasters who do this, like the one guy who does it very consistently is this guy called the Malaysia Kumar podcast.
Okay.
So, but his podcast is in Tamil, and his focus is lifestyle entertainment. This is the only thing he touches on. But he's consistent, very consistent in his content. But he tells me, sometimes it's a bit hard because at the end of the day, you are doing it to earn something. Your effort needs to be paid. And that's fine. But there's no company out there that's doing it just for podcasts. In fact, in Southeast Asia, there's nobody doing it. I think the closest is Hong Kong, if I'm not mistaken. So, but in US and Europe, these companies exist. And what has happened to that industry is that podcasters are earning in the millions because they have consistent revenue every episode from different brands to their podcast. So that's what I want to do. That's my next plans.
The product that you have it's something that I would say worthwhile of spending enough money compared to throwing it on some fashion valet company, right? I mean, this is an industry that is changing and will change, and more Malaysians will benefit from it.
Yeah.
What did you say?
Yeah, definitely. No, I definitely do think so, because media as we see it now is changing.
Right.
It's going, like, if you look at one statistics from last year, more than 75% of ad spend in Malaysia went to digital platforms.
I want to very quickly endorse you on that. So one of my first guest on this podcast was Johan Ishak, the former boss of Media Prima, Awesome TV and everything else. I could back this up because this is the exact number he said. About 2 billion net revenue, 70% of it went to overseas market and social media like this. So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, like, I was talking to one guest he hasn't come on yet, but he's a economist, and he was asking me, what's your numbers like? So when I told him what my reach was on a monthly basis, he was like, wow, it's even higher than some of the news organizations out there, because people are fed up with pre-packaged news. They want the raw, rough content that podcasting does give. And it's an exciting time to be a podcaster, because I think in Malaysia the industry is just starting to grow, right? And eventually, as it matures, then I think it's going to be very hard for people to take over. Of course, then after a while it will die down, another thing will take over, as everything in life. But right now it's a very exciting time to be a podcaster.
Right.
Yeah.
I think podcast is where most people get their news right now.
Yeah.
Like if you look at what's happening in America right now, right? The American elections. The mainstream media there is packaging things in a way that they've always done, edited it, reshot things, removed and faked, well, like Mr. Trump would say, fake news media. With podcasts, you don't have enough time to fake things because it's live.
Live, yeah.
And I mean, it's recorded, but people don't go back to edit it. They're like, take the whole chunk, whether you like it or not. Like I saw Donald Trump appear on both Patrick Bet-David's podcast and Joe Rogan's podcast. These are the two significant podcasts in America that is shaping America in many ways. I was in an award show recently, government award show, and they had 5 podcasts. 4 of which I've never heard before. It's a podcast of Kelantan, it's a podcast in Terengganu and Perlis and other parts. And the 5th one was KS. KS didn't win. It was this unheard of podcast that somehow won by jury nomination. My question is, who the jury are? Like, don't they, right? So they're trying to correct something that cannot be corrected anymore, because mainstream media is becoming very irrelevant very quickly.
Yeah.
Taking that in light, how do you foresee your network overtaking this? Do you someday see V Media being bigger than Media Prima?
I mean, yeah, I mean, in terms of if you were to but I think it's a bit of apple and orange comparison, because I think Media Prima is a GLC nonetheless, right? So they will definitely be backed by government.
They will have 47 million.
Yeah, they will have the millions to spend, right, to waste it. Yeah, and they are the government's, mic, right? So speakers. So definitely they will be there. But you're right. I think no matter what, you can't deny the truth. And I think that podcasts, even like the one that you are having now, starting now, regardless of, I do agree that it will overtake mainstream media. I think it's already closing in on doing that, because if you look at like KS, for example, KS has become a cultural thing. A lot of people listen to it, right? But I think there will be podcasts that will come on that will overtake KS, because KS, after a while, they will hit a ceiling, because they are run by 2 individuals who have political interests. So they cannot say what they really want to say all the time. So whereas when you have an independent podcast, then without any strings attached, it can say anything it wants. It can comment on anything, of course, under the guise of the law, right? But it can say more than what KS can say. So authenticity now is something that is being sought after so much because it is lacking in mainstream media. You brought up a very good example about the current elections in the US. Social media is presenting both candidates in their actual light. In fact, I had a guest on just a few weeks ago from this NGO called Empower. It was Maria Chin Abdullah, the lady from Bursa, and another guy, Gopal, who's the current executive director of Empower. And Gopal, in one of his response to my questions, so we were talking about female presence in parliament. So they are pushing for 30% representation of women in parliament. So he was using Kamala Harris as an example of a woman leader, right? So, and I immediately laughed. I literally laughed because, you know, like even for my channel, I want to do a video on Kamala Harris, right? But I cannot because it's so cringe.
Yes.
I cannot bring myself to watch what she says. It's so, you know, like the whole middle class, all this. No,
I'm from a middle class family.
Yeah.
I went to school in a school bus.
Yeah. And then you were Indian, then you became black overnight, you know. So, but the problem is, if say you removed social media, you remove podcasts and content creators out of the sphere, and if it was just mainstream media, the conversation about her from Indian to black will not happen. But if as a viewer, I've seen her tell that I'm Indian, now you're black. Right? So, but thanks to the independent indie media scene, which podcast
Fake news media.
It has taken fake news media to task.
Right.
Where is the truth? Podcasters are there, especially in the sphere of politics that we're talking about. I think we are the last bastion of truth that exists. So that is why it will overtake mainstream media. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I can see that trend happening here in Malaysia, right? Where if in Parliament, they talk about things that KS have mentioned repeatedly. Like, all right, and I've seen members of current government and opposition government come to KS and present their views, and it's being presented well enough at this point in time. But I'm not sure how long they'll be able to stay unbiased. It's very obvious KJ has his biases.
Yeah.
And he's still very upset that he lost, right? But I can see very clearly that Shahidan has a more open viewpoint and everything else. So it balances it out, presents his biases without fail, in a very positive light, I would say. Now, speaking of that, speaking of biases, I see your podcast, you bring in a lot of fringe issues covering the Indian community. And I like that you bring these issues because every time, I'm 44 this year, bro. My father's from the estate. My mother's from the rice fields of Kedah. Up to the age of about 14, 15, I would go back to Kuala Selangor, to my father's estate and everything else. So I understood the environment there. But it's very sick and tiring that every time people talk about Indian community, it always be about two things. Tamil schools, estate. Tamil schools, estates. You go to estates now, there's more Banglas there in Indonesia.
Yeah, there's no more Indians there.
Why are we still talking about estates? Tamil school. It seems to be the harping issues, but you bring in other issues like statelessness, a lot of varying issues of Indian community. Is this by design or is it an accident?
I wouldn't say by design, but I think that's just who I am. So again, like one of the things I do in my podcast is, and a promise I made to myself is I will not focus on two things. I will not pander and I will not focus on the views. Because when you start doing those two things, it kills the joy of doing what you love, right? So people have told me, wow, I can see that you're passionate about this. It comes on, it basically comes out of the screen. But that's because I don't pander and I don't look at the views. Now, just to backtrack on your previous point, why politicians in Malaysia focus on these two issues is because these are the two issues that can rile up a person who is not informed enough about what is actually happening. Right? So that is why the issue of temple and Tamil schools or whatever is maintained forever, because those are the only two things that these politicians can ride. Those are the waves they can ride to ensure that they are heard or they have any leverage on social media. And for them the only key thing is I want the vote. So the way I'm going to garner the vote is I'm going to bring up Tamil school because it's Tamil and that they know it's a very culturally sensitive thing. Temples, of course, that is a huge heartstring to tug, right? So they will not go above this. They have been shown to be wrong. I mean, the issue of temples, Tamil schools, for instance. Let's look at Tamil schools. They harp on this issue forever, but the answer is so simple. Just relocate.
Yes.
Just relocate. Oh, no, cannot. What about this school in the estate? Yeah, the funding. Yes, MOE gives out funding based on the number of students in your school. If you have a Tamil school in an estate where all the Indians have urbanized to city centers, there will not be students there, thus it will not get funding. That is why MOE now is doing the Sekolah Cantoman program, which is a good program. But they won't. They will always harp on something to bring up. Even you look at Mitra, the opposition always harps on this point: temple, Tamil school, temple, Tamil school. There are so many other issues.
Yeah.
So that is why recently when I did a commentary on Sudan, who came on the podcast, and I gave him an alternative view. I said, he was talking about allocations, and I said, look, why don't you focus on, you urge the government to set up new agencies to focus on selected issues in the Indian community. Maybe one would be to create more export opportunity for Indian businesses. The second would be to ensure education is of a certain level within the Indian community. And that got very good response because I think Indians are just fed up of this.
Correct.
They don't have a leader who represents the future. They talk about now because that's the only thing they can talk about. Yeah. They cannot, I've never heard a leader go, okay, this is my plan for the Indians. By this year, you guys will be this, and this is how I'm going to achieve it. This is a timeline. Right. And for this, I want 1 billion. No, they never. Yeah. They just, when budget comes, we want 500 million. For what?
Why?
For what?
That's always my question, right? You ask, okay, fine. There's all this thing going on, and I'm not politically inclined. Anybody who's watching who wants to hate. But all this harp, like, we only got 100-something million, 100-something. Okay, bro, what are you going to do with the 130 million first? Give me a detailed plan. Every time I go to the Mitra's website, I see 3 things. And it neither inspires confidence. Number 1, allocation is for Tamil schools, temple, and dialysis centers. So much dialysis center. I'm like, seriously, are we all dying of kidney disease or what? Like, why isn't there anything more? Yeah. Right? How about small, medium entrepreneurs like ourselves? How about people who are in the higher tax income bracket? Why are we not focusing on that? The Indian blueprint, which is beyond Tamil schools and temples and everything else. There's a lot of Indian graduates who graduate without a good paying job. But when they don't get a job, it's blamed on the quota system. I'm not sure how this works for everybody. But I've had Indian bosses, I've had Malay bosses, I've had Chinese bosses, I've had white bosses, I've got Arab bosses. I was never mistreated by any of them. Yeah. It was just purely merit. When I got out of college, my first job was as a lecturer in Lim Kok Wing University. Lim Kok Wing University doesn't get any more Chinese than that. Huh? But within 6 months, because I did my job well, I was promoted. By the end of my 2 years, I was almost VP already. But I didn't want the VP role, I left. Same thing with my Arab job and everything else. There are a lot of other, I once posted this on LinkedIn. And I had an Indian, Malaysian Indian guy called me and said, you can't be that obtuse. This is not how the world works. I'm like, how am I being obtuse? I mean, I live in the Malay mainstream film industry. I do mainstream content. I don't feel any biases projected towards me. Yes, there are limitations within the quota system, which I agree should be removed. But I think it's really because we do not have a clear Indian leader guiding us towards that process.
Definitely, we don't, and we don't have somebody with a vision. You don't have you don't have somebody who says, okay, like I said, this is like, for example, you look at even the 100 million. Okay, when I have gone to MDEC to apply for grants, MDEC is very clear on what their outcome they want to achieve, what is their objective of the money they have put there. MDEC is very clear. You go to MOSTI. MOSTI is very clear on what they want to achieve. That's why the grant is set up like this, the application is set up like this. I've tried to apply to MOSTI and they've told me, look, their focus is novel ideas, right? They don't want to just fund something that is repetitive. You go to Cradle, they are very clear on what they want. Whereas Mitra is a welfare body. It's not a transformational body as it claims. It's a welfare body. If you are saying, okay, we have set aside, say, maybe 50 million for grants associated with kindergarten. Okay. Fine, no problem. But we have also isolated the areas where we want kindergartens to be built in, because this has the largest quantity of B40 Indians, largest quantity of students who have no access. We want people, you build there, we give you a grant. That's a different story. Here, no, just apply. I give you the...
Yes.
So there is no one telling me, okay, this is where I want to go, this I want to... No. So that is why in my podcast, I don't focus on like Tamil schools. And in fact, there are a lot of topics that I've been asked to talk about that I don't. Like that suicide, Isha, who committed suicide.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
I didn't really focus on her because first thing is, and I got a friend of mine who's a lawyer to really talk about the legal aspect of it. Like, because I think this is a problem that's continuously happening. It's happening even today. But no one is talking about, okay, how do I, if I'm cyberbullied, where do I go? Can I go to the police? No, you can't. Can I? Where do I go? So there are avenues to go, right? And people may not know. And there have been people who have suicide before. I think 2 or 3 cases of girls committing suicide because of cyberbullying. So that was a different take. So I like to take different takes. I don't want to be known as the guy who jumps on trends.
Right.
And it's worked to my benefit because you were the first person to actually hit me up on TikTok and say, look, you don't pander. Many people have told me that.
Right.
You know, your topics are your own. You talk about what you want, which is good. Statelessness, no one cares.
Yes.
No one cares.
It's a real problem.
It's a real problem. A lot of Indians, like I met that girl who was telling me stories, and I talked to her friend who's also stateless. I mean, it's terrible. There's a lot of problems that are not being handled because they are not topics that get you mileage on social media. So today's world, we see politicians are more focused on trends. Okay, if I say this, it's going to get the mileage, I'm going to say it. Like, there were some MPs who recently said, who was a deputy minister who said that Indians are the lowest earners in Malaysia. Yeah, you are saying this, but what is the solution? What, like, if I'm the prime minister, if you're a CEO of a company, right? Forget prime minister, you're CEO of a company. If you have a staff who at an annual budget meeting comes to you and says, Amar, I want 10 million. Okay, why?
Yes.
I want to buy this, buy that. Why? You have to explain. You cannot blame the CEO for saying you have no explanation. I don't know why you want this. What's the outcome? What's the KPI? And you want 10 million? I mean, it doesn't make sense. If any one of these so-called politicians who represent Indians who want more money were placed in that same situation, they would say the same thing.
Exactly.
They would say, no, why? Why do you want this money? Right? Like, for example, I had Dato Kamanathan, who was the ex-deputy minister of education. He went to Najib and he said, he came up with a full plan. He said, these are the preschools that I want to do. It'll cost this much and this is the timeline.
Yeah, I saw that episode.
Yeah.
It was a very well-informed podcast.
Yeah. So that is why Najib gave the extra 50 million.
Yes.
So you have to have these plans. There are no plans. When have you seen a plan before budget? Right, the day before budget, I hear the opposition saying, we want 500 million. Budgets
Why?
don't work like that.
Yeah.
You can't go to a company annual meeting, guys. You know what? I want 200 million. Yeah, it doesn't work like that.
No. While we're on that topic, so I want to talk about, because I'm my day job, I'm a business coach. I've done business coaching for about 20 years now, all across Asia, Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, all these places. And I would say that the Indian community in general in Malaysia are not so progressive business-wise. And I would say agencies like Mitra are to blame. Because I see the grants are being given for sewing machine, barbershop. In a world of Sundar Pichais and Satya Nadellas, I can't freaking believe that we here in Malaysia have resorted Indians to such low-tier jobs only. Right? Why sewing machines? Why not a Jimmy Choo level fashion kind of things? Right?
I tell you why. Because it goes back to the flea experiment. I don't know that you're aware of this. So there was this experiment you can see on social media. I even talk about this on my interview with Sudan. It's coming out soon, that clip. So whereby this scientist took a bunch of fleas and put them in a jar. And then he closed the lid. Right? So the fleas got used to that jar. Okay, so they would only move, because they know there's a barrier, they would move, right? Now, interestingly enough, after that, this scientist removes the cap. When he removed the cap, the fleas never jumped out.
Condition.
They were conditioned. And the interesting thing is, when they procreate, the new fleas that are introduced in that also never jump out because they mimic the environment. So the problem with Indians, number one, is that we have had many people across many, many decades telling us that we are not good enough. Because that is the punchline that politicians need during elections. Oh, Indians, you hear Indians saying it. Oh, don't be with this Indian, he's a gangster. Oh, look at the face. One very thing happened in my apartment the other day. So I was with my daughter in the pool. And this group of Indian boys, teenagers, they came and they jumped in and they were having fun. They are dark-skinned Indian boys, right? They're having fun. So I just continued, and my daughter was amazed at how they're jumping in. She's 2, so she's what they're doing, jumping in. And I can see people concerned, who are these kids? Because they're black, because they're dark-skinned. But if it were a bunch of Chinese boys doing it, you wouldn't bat an eye.
Right.
Or if a Malay, you wouldn't say anything. It's because of this. There's so many factors. Programming thanks to cartoons, movies where black is bad. A dark skin is bad. So can you imagine if you, as a kid, from the time you are young till the time you're adult, you are told either overtly or covertly, you are told that you're not good enough. What's going to happen? You're never going to dream. For you to dream, you need to believe that you can achieve it. But if you believe you can't achieve that, then what's the other option? The only other option is to blame. So when people say, let's be fair, what has happened in Malaysia in terms of the NEP and the social contract has led to a lot of abuses and social. That cannot be denied, lah.
Right.
No politician is going to ever win that argument, right? Even Anwar also could not deny it to the Indian girl.
Right.
But when you see the B40 Indians or Indians from a lower category, who are how do I say, being told that they are not good enough, they are not earning enough, the government doesn't care for you, school system is bad, and all that. When they go to, it's like that movie Jagat, where there's a scene where the teacher tells the boy, "You're not going to be anything." He's not going to be anything because it's hard. Like the interesting case now of T. Thambi. When T. Thambi first happened, now that guy is raking in 100,000 every month from selling tea. He has one cafe, he's doing well. But his story is never put up there. And then, of course, within us Indians, we have problems. If the fellow is a Tamil means, then you better be, he cannot be your hero because he's a Tamil. If he's a Malayali, then the Tamils won't lie. Now, so this problem is there.
Let's not forget the Telugus.
Telugus, don't forget Telugus as well. I love Telugu women, by the way. So, the most attractive women. Crazy attractive. Shout out to Anushka Shetty. Damn, man. Anyway.
Vinod, I would like to remind you here, you're married with 2 kids.
Yeah, that's true.
2 beautiful Chinese women. So.
Please cut this out from the interview. So that's the problem. So when you don't have the belief that you can do it, you want to, like, I give you another example. If I put you in a swimming pool, in an apartment, in a condo swimming pool, right, and I asked you to swim from one end to the other, you would do it, right? Now, I take you and I put you in an Olympic-sized swimming pool.
Might drown.
No, you'll reach the end. You may take longer, you may suffer because you can't breathe, but you reach the end. So the problem with the Indian kids is they are never told that limit is never moved. And who they have as heroes? Russell Brand said it very good in his book Revolution. He says, if you don't select your heroes, others will select them for you.
Correct.
So Indians don't have heroes. Although we have so many people in Malaysia who are successful business. Look at the Lotus Group, the late Tan Sri Yanalingam,
yes,
Anda Krishnan. Anda Krishnan, God knows who is he. I don't even know who he is still today. I don't know what he. I don't know who is he, basically. I think Maxis is one of his smaller investments, I think.
Yeah.
But how many Indian kids look up this guy and say, "Well, I want to be like him, man"? No, they don't, because they are told, "No, you can't." So that's the problem. That's the problem with the Indian society, is because the leaders don't free their mind. They shackle it.
Like Matrix, free your mind.
Yes. Take the red pill.
There is no building. There is no building.
Is it red pill or blue pill? Red pill. I can't remember. Yeah, whatever.
Blue pill.
Blue pill is to free your mind, or red pill?
No, red pill.
Red pill for your mind. Yeah. So sorry, but that's what I think is happening. Yeah.
So on that thing, I want to track back a little bit into that movie Jagat. It was a good movie, but I didn't like the movie. Okay. I'll tell you why. So the movie basically says that Indians, they are into this, they are prone to violence and everything else because the estate area, they grew up in such a way and etc. I don't agree to that one bit. My father was from the estate. His father is from the estate. My father never drank. His father didn't drink. My whole bunch of uncles and aunties all don't drink. And nobody got into the violent thing. As a matter of fact, I had one uncle who got sucked into gangsterism at a very young age. But he made sure that I didn't steer off into the wrong path. So, again, speaking of heroes, at that point in time, growing up, my father was my hero. My uncle was my hero. I think heroism starts from the family, right? Because how do you change an entire community? You cannot go outwards, right? You start with your father, your mother. I think the responsibility should come from within that individual. Like, you know what? I'm going to be good to my wife. I'm going to be good to my son. I think that should be the way, right?
No, definitely, because even if you look at black culture, if you look at their history, the black civil rights movement was one of the most powerful movements ever. And if you were a government, you wouldn't like the civil rights movement at all. Come on, which other movement you have? Martin Luther King and Malcolm X is together. Such dynamic leaders, man.
Right.
So what they did was to weaken the black person. Is they went after the family institution, because the powers that be know what is important. It's family. Family is key.
Right.
So in the Indian diaspora, you're right. It takes the family to decide the future of their children. Like this one guy I follow him. His name is Vishen Lakiani. And he said he did it like this. He said that a child is like a pipe.
Right.
The more barriers and the more stereotypes and perceptions you feed them, the more the pipe gets muddled with blocks. So the water cannot flow. So if you want your child to achieve their full potential, remove those blocks. Do not insert it in the first place. So the same thing with us. Like if every family can tell the child that child deserves the best, that they are meant for great things, then the entire community will change. It will change. Because if I think the greatest power a human has is the ability to dream. If you can dream, and if you believe your dream, and you are convicted to achieve your dream, my goodness, the sky's the limit, man. But I agree with you. But all that starts with the family. The parents need to, sacrifice. Yeah, definitely. That's why if you look at Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, Michael Jackson, you look at Lee Chong Wei, all parents.
Right.
No one else. It was the parents, Serena Williams, Venus Williams, parents. Parents are the one that decide the future of the child, not the other way around.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think this over-reliance on we need external input.
No.
Because I see Chinese schools, they are their own institution. There have been a lot of external things that has been done to try to bring the Chinese schools down and away. But you see, other races have gone into their system, not the other way around.
Yeah.
I see Malay parents sending their kids to Chinese school. I see Indian parents sending their kids to Chinese school. But when this is done, they're being labeled as, traitors and everything else. But they are not seen as, these are people who have their own culture and they want to assimilate another culture to become bigger and better.
Definitely, yeah.
So I want to ask you. So you married a Chinese woman?
Yep.
So you have
China woman.
Yeah. Chinese. But that's the Malaysian way, right? I mean, to me, I identify as a Malaysian. Indian is just my ethnicity and my cultural makeup in certain ways, but I'm Malaysian first, so I'm never affected by racial slurs or Balik India, and I'm like, I don't even respond to it. I'm like, I don't know what to respond to that. But I would say you're what Malaysian should be, right? You intermix and everything else. What will be the pipe that you lay down for your children?
Well, I'm already doing it. It's very simple. I think parenting is about. One thing I've learned about parenting is that the harsh truth about it is that children don't do what you say. They do what you do. This is the truth. So if I want my daughter to be fearless, I have to be fearless.
Correct.
I cannot expect her to be, because children can smell the BS very quickly. So, you're not going to get away with that. And I think, like when I talk to people and when they talk about their parents, especially if the parents no longer, that doesn't matter. They seem, if it's a father, you will hear them talk about how protective he was, how hardworking he was. These are the traits that they remember. And so for me, what I try to inspire in my children, especially my eldest, is that I let her be her. Of course, there are rules to follow. I'm old school in that way. I'm the type of father I'll beat my children because I'm old school.
Me too.
Yeah.
Hashtag Anand, if you ever watch this, this is evidence.
Yeah, I don't believe in this news. I have to give my child a gold star. Go to hell with that. Keep that in America. Don't bring it here.
Yeah.
So, but I like for example, when my daughter was born, I had this thing. I say, because I love badminton, so I feel that Malaysian women's singles, there's not really a strong competitor. And also, if you look at women's singles, the good ones are tall. and or from China, whichever. And so I said, no, my daughter's going to be tall. So, with the smash and all that. So what I started doing was when she was very young, which was a few months, while I'm watching badminton, I'll put her next to me and then we'll be watching it and all that kind of stuff. And so now what has happened is, she'll come to me and say, I want to play badminton. So she takes the racket herself.
Conditioning.
Yeah. So, this I learned from a coach, and he told me, he said, you start your child at 4, right? But even if you start your child at 4, they will never play badminton with them. They just play games with the shuttlecock, with the racket to get them to like the sport. They don't force them, no, okay, now run around. No, they don't do that. Maybe they do in China, I don't know about here, but here they don't do. So that's what I do. So what I want my children to do is, of course, as a parent, you have dreams. You want your child to be this. You want a child. I would like to see my daughter in parliament. I would like to see her as a cabinet minister and all that. But it's not your life.
Correct.
That's the truth of it. It's not your life. That's what you want for yourself, not what you want for them. So all I can do is, and I've told my wife, I say, all we can do as parents is give them the whatever support they need. But in terms of life, is to assist them to become fearless, not fearless, but courageous, and to go after their passions, with a fiery passion, with a conviction, That's all I can do. And I'll be the happiest father when I see my children who are doing what they want, they're doing it, with that ferocity. Oh, that'll be happiest ever. I definitely will be. So that's what I want. So that's the pipeline. Like, also in terms of culture, because she's Chinese, I'm Indian. One thing I told her from the start, I said, I'm not that Indian who wants to be Chinese. And there's many of them out there.
Yeah.
Okay, these are the Indians who will use ma la in their words. I'm not like that. I'm a Tamil, I'm a Tamil song listening guy. My wife tells me, she just says, you and your brother, she always compares myself, and she says, me, I don't look the stereotype Indian, but I'm very Indian. She said, right? She said my brother's the opposite, right? He's more flexible. He can eat. I'm a banana leaf guy. I love that, right? I may eat Japanese food, but I need my curry. Okay, I need my tea in the evening. All right, so that's the kind of man I am. So with my children, I told my wife, I said, because of that, I want my children to live 2 cultures. It does not make sense for them when they are in a situation where they can learn from both cultures to just do one.
Yeah.
And most of the time, the one culture that takes the backseat is the Indian.
Yeah.
Why
is that?
Like I said, perception. Because Indian culture is viewed based on the perception of the Indian person. The Indian person is viewed as not good enough to be accepted. Is looked upon as down level, right? So we all worship the Chinese. Because the Chinese have economic power, they may have their schools, the big buildings, the big doors. So these guys must be good. But people don't understand that Indian culture is one of the oldest cultures in the world. People don't accept that it was India that gave China Kung Fu.
Yes.
So you have Bruce Lee because of us.
Yes. It's India that gave China its firecrackers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the trade route that India established was from China to Kerala.
Okay.
That's why the Chinese opera is very similar to the Kerala opera.
Okay.
And that was the trade route essentially.
Okay.
Before it went to other parts of India. So even fireworks came from there.
So a lot of things, right? So because our culture has influenced so many things. So I said, why don't they enjoy both? So like for me, like I go to temple a lot, so I bring my daughters with me. But I tell my wife, no, let's bring them. We go to Chinese temple. I don't care which god they are attached to. Like for me, like when I became, I think 20s, when I was in my 20s, that's when I sort of gravitated towards Lord Shiva. But that wasn't by choice. It just happened.
Right.
And I always believe when God knows it's time, He will call you. Right? Usually children don't get called because they don't understand. Right? I only started appreciating Hinduism when I started exploring other religions. I started reading about Christianity, Islam, and then I said, oh wow. Then I started reading about Hinduism as well. So same thing. My daughter tells me one day that she loves Kuan Yin. Fine. But the key thing is that they have to have God in their life. So that is the thing that I want. I want freedom. I'm not going to be those fathers like, no, you have to come to temple. And because when you do that to your child, they will go further away.
Correct.
Just let go. Yeah. So that's my way of doing it. Yeah.
Right. That is a very interesting parallel that you drew, because I've seen this. Again, this has not happened to me. I don't know why. My late wife was Filipino. And I embraced Indian culture way more than other Indians who into mixed marriages or whatever it is, because my late wife would dress up in sari. We go to temple, she would only come in a sari. We would go to Bati Caves, 272 floors, steps. She would come in a sari, would do anadaram there and everything else. I have a prayer altar and everything else. My current partner is also not Indian, but Deepavali, she comes to the temple fully dressed in Indian garbs and everything else. Because I believe that the male's role is to lead. The Hindu doctrine is whichever way your Shiva is, the Parvati must follow. That's how it is. And but I don't put down other cultures. Why do you think, besides the fact, okay, fine, we say I've seen Chinese Indian men who marry Chinese women who gyrate more towards the Chinese way, economic power, etc., etc. How about those who marry into other cultures, but they still gyrate towards that culture? Why are they seen as lesser? But this does not happen in foreign countries, though.
Because they don't really have.
Because you see Indians who marry into Rishi Sunak.
Okay.
Rishi Sunak married into a Tamil family. Right? Rishi Sunak is a North Indian guy. But he still wears all these Tamil things and he's very proud, and you see the same thing in India. Sundar Pichai doesn't go to Vivek Ramaswamy. So why is it only happening in our context, in our diaspora?
You mean when Indians marry other races?
Yes.
Foreign races?
In Malaysian Indian culture, diaspora.
I think because number one is there is so little known about Indian culture. Indian culture is not mainstream. It's not pop culture. Like white culture is pop culture, very much so. So when you have one culture that isn't the popular one, it is easier to abide by a culture that everybody else abides. So you see, human beings are at the end of the day communal beings. We are social beings. So most of us want to conform to the tribe's nuances. If the tribe believes that this is A, it'll be easier for us to agree than to choose B. Right? So it's in our genetic makeup. So like if you look at white culture is permeated across the world. You know so much about American culture. I'm sure Americans know maybe 1%, even zero of what what's happening here. They don't know that we are PH and all, but we know Kamala Harris, we know Trump, right? We know them so well. So that is why, because it's easier. So when you take the easy route, for example, if back again, if you were to marry a Chinese, right? It is easy for you to say, let's just go the Chinese way, because it's easy to just to not go against the grain. Then it's easy to just follow what people want, and this applies to other races as well. Whether you're white, European, all that, it's easy. So, but I also do want to say that it's also on a case-to-case basis. I think it is. I would say it's more rampant where people just forget the Indianness, because the Indianness, number one, is not cool. It's not a cool culture.
Why would you say that?
Come on.
In the world of Rajinikanth and everything else.
Rajinikanth is famous to us. He's a god to us. But I've had people look and go, why is he so famous? Why are you all screaming?
Who is this?
My wife.
Oh, Lord. No, because Rajinikanth is huge even in the Malay culture.
It is, but that's the thing. Malay culture and generally is more accepting to foreign cultures. If you look at K-pop, how much it was accepted by the Malay community. Before that, Bollywood, how much it was accepted. I know Malay girls who can speak in Hindi.
Sing
Fluent
in
Hindi. Like I'm like, wow. I'm Indian. I don't understand what they're saying. But they are so. It is the culture of that tribe and also the individuals that make it. So I think that matters. Whereas if you go to white culture, for example, they may dabble in your culture. They may come to Batu and say, wow, what a cultural experience. I hate that term that they use. But at the end of the day, they want their own space.
Right.
I used to go to Sarawak, right? In Kuching, I remember there was this place. Even in Miri, there was a place. Because I spent 5 years in Sarawak. So in Miri and Kuching, you have white people. Okay? But they have their own spots. Yes, they will come to you, Hari Gawai, they'll go and drink with the Longhouse people. Yeah. After that, they'll go back to their own spots, which you cannot go to.
Correct.
Like you are the outsider.
Yeah.
This is my freaking country.
Yes.
But that's how white people are. So it's their tribe. That's how they tribe assimilate. Like if you look at, and they like to talk down.
Yes.
If you, see, we are all Easterners. Come on. We are the ones who gave the world all its philosophy, everything, right?
Bidets.
Yeah, bidets. Thank God. Yeah, only the whites could use toilet paper. I mean, I remember one guy who said it's amazing how white people use towels to wash their hand, but the part that really needs water, they said no, we're gonna dry wash this.
Oh God.
So that's the thing. So their culture is very dismissive culture. Like if you look at the way they talk about human condition, they like to represent people based on pigeonholes. I'm gay, I'm trans, or I'm Democrat. How can you be? No one is entirely liberal. I am liberal on some things, I'm conservative on others. That's the way to live, right? So because of that, their way of doing it, that mannerism of interpreting other people or other things is just the same. So when it comes to Indian culture, they'll be like, wow, they'll do yoga, right? And then they'll put Vinayagar statue there. Why? I don't know. Firstly,
by the way, it's Vinayagar, not Ganesh.
Ganesh.
Bloody hate that.
It's not. It's at least say Ganesha. No, Ganesh.
It's Vinayagar, Pilayar, okay?
Not Ganesh.
Not. Back to the podcast.
Yeah. So like they will do that, and then they like that mysticism, the mysteriousness as it has, which I don't understand what is all about, but they like that. But at the end of the day, they are white, and they are the superior race. So that's why so if I married a white man, if I'm a woman, I married a white man, it would be very hard for me because that cultures, the most likely that culture would not be accepting. They want a liberal way.
Right.
By liberal means, I have no commitment to anything. I pray to nothing. I'm free. I'm that kind of thing.
You're
so
free
it's
to
very
be
hard.
a moron.
Yeah. So I think that's why it's up to that culture that you're like. Malays are different. Malays are more accepting.
Yep.
Minus past but the rest of them they're good.
Actually, even the past people, I would say it's the Nick Aziz days.
Oh yes.
He was a real leader and
he was. He was a more
he
inclusive
wasn't
leader.
Propagating bigotry.
Yeah.
Right. It was a very different and a lot of leaders that you have in PH now were from past. Anwar Ibrahim was a past youth leader. Right. But with all that being said, let's bring it back home in terms of I would say people like yourselves in the future are the kind of heroes, leaders, idols that the Indian community needs to look at. When I say Indians, people only think like two parts. Indians only exist in two parts: Brickfields and Jalan Tengku Kelana.
Yeah.
Right? When you look at the high-end T20 places, Indians got here. Like right? So what would you want to do moving forward to bring more awareness about this community? Not to change the community, but at least awareness about this community.
Awareness would be definitely through discussions like this. Definitely, I want to do more of that and talk about these issues and talk about the Indian people and all that. And like I see, like even today, what we are talking about is a bit different from what is usually talked about. We are really going more to the psychological aspect of why racism is a bit different. These kind of conversations will attract people because it's new conversations. It's not a new topic, but these things are never addressed, right? So that's what bring awareness. Another thing is bring awareness by how you live. Like for me, in fact, I was talking to my brother. I say, because we have a podcast called Broadcast, right? And I say, why don't we wear Indian outfits? To really make it like we are Indian, right? To showcase this, we are proud of who we are. I think that's the way to move the country forward. If people start seeing that these Indian faces are proud of being Indian, then I should be too.
Yes.
They would, it's like, monkey see, monkey do, right? That's how it is. But now you have a lot of Indians who are sort of, insecure. That's why I could never get along with white people because I'm very honest with I always tell like British people, they talk about, India, what a beautiful, what an amazing empire they were. I said, before you all talk about India, why don't you all give back the diamond you stole?
Yes.
Right, that's
all the trillions you stole over for 400 years.
Yeah, then let's have a talk about how great an empire you are. But, so that sort of thing. I think we Indians need to be more proud of who we are. We need the way we express in public. We need to champion our beliefs, champion our race. Because if we don't do it, eventually it will die away. And that's sad because we are a 8,000 year old culture, more than that even. That's just Hinduism. We're not race, I'm sure, much older. But so we need to do that. Otherwise, I think like through me, what I want to do is like talk about these things. I have people like you on, like you came on my podcast as well. And by having people like you, what I want is people to be aware that Indians come in different faces, different sizes, different income groups, different beliefs, different shades, different language proficiencies. We are not just your stereotype. And the more that we do this, then people are like, wow, I didn't know. Wow, Indians are really, wow, okay. We give the Chinese by default a respect that, oh, they are better, they are good. We give, like, you bring an Indian to a Chinese household, he's going to be, wow, this Hokkien, he's Hakka, they'll know. But you bring a Chinese or Malay to an Indian household, they're like, oh,
Apunene.
Oh, you mean there's other besides Tamil? Like my in-laws were shocked when they like, I said, no, my mother's Malayali. They were like, what? Oh, I thought y'all were all Tamil. That's not an insult, but what is insulting is that you don't even take the time to learn about my faith, my people. But we don't talk about it.
Right.
We are represented by the wrong people, represented by just one pool of person, which is the Tamil people. Like now like you're doing your own podcast, right? When more people see this, they're like, oh wow, he's Indian. I didn't know he's Indian. I didn't know Indians can converse openly with other races or confidently. I thought we had to just sit among our Tamil schools and talk to ourselves. So that's what I think we should all do. That's what all Indians should do, definitely. Yeah, not just harp on, oh, this is the problem, Indians. No. Let's make it forward, man. Let the politicians do that. We bring the community forward. Yeah, that's the idea.
And I think it's more in the hands of individuals like yourself, myself, to bring the community forward. But more, I would say, inject the Malaysian agenda rather than just the Indian agenda. Because end of the day, it is our country. If we don't stake a claim, then we will disappear.
I do, but I don't agree with what that you're saying. And I'll tell you why. Because my number one political hero is Malcolm X.
Right.
He's a god to me, right? So, I mean, he's no one better than him to me. And what I felt was that I used to have the same mentality as you. We are Malaysian and all this. You cannot call a country or a society Malaysian. You can't label them with one term when each of the component races are being treated differently.
Right.
Okay. So for me, I feel the day when Indians can truly be Malaysian, I won't be alive anymore. Because my job is to look after the Indians because no one cares for them. I'll bring one good example. If we even spoke about this, you talked about how you like to see the Indian stand-up comedy scene. I told you how I used to bring down Tamil stand-up comic acts to Malaysia. And the only reason why I was able to bring down Tamil stand-up acts to Malaysia and sell out shows was because nobody cared enough to just look. Nobody cared enough to just Google, okay, who are the top South Indian Tamil? No one cared. So, even now, there's so many market segments in this country that are not being utilized because no one cares. Have you ever seen Indian storybook for kids?
On TikTok, but for example, I'm a big Muruga guy, and I want my son to understand the Muruga thing. So I bought him a Kanda Puranam, but in English. But you don't see much of it. I see your point, but
now you see in MPHs, right? You see, you don't see that. I saw one recently, but that was from a Singapore author, a Singapore publisher in Kinokuniya, but it was about Deepawali and all that. But you have local authors producing these similar books about Chinese New Year, about Hari Raya and all that, Malay culture, but not about Indian culture. So there's so many gaps in the market only because people don't care enough. So that's what I'm saying. Like for me, why I feel like, yes, I'm Malaysian, I'm proud to be Malaysian, and I will always be Malaysian. And this is what they can call me Pendatang or whatever. I don't even understand why they waste their time. I mean, Parmeswara was Indian, by the way. So interesting. The word Malayu also comes from a Sanskrit word. Yes. But again,
Malayur.
The word Bhumiputra is also a Sanskrit word. Dear God. Sometimes I'm telling them, if you guys want us to leave, give us our language back. But so the idea is that I feel like we should focus on our race to bring them up to a certain level, and then we can say, all right, now it's time to be Malaysian. That's what I think, just to add that.
No, I agree. So this is, you see, two Indian guys can have differences and not break each other's head with tables and bottles.
No, that's because the camera's on. I got my eye on that table. That's my weapon.
Right, but yeah, so I understand in the point where you say like, yep, blocks need to be removed. And I think moving on as a nation, I think this falls to the eyes of the politicians. I think we should stop playing the race card entirely. Because I've got great friends from all racial makeup, and wonderful people. And if you remove the racial block, a true Malaysian would come up. regardless of race. So when we see a match being won by Lee Chong Wei, we're going like, hey, China tu menang. Or the double Malaysian, the Indian.
Polizan and Tina.
Right. We would go like, yes, orang Malaysia menang. We won't harp on like, kenapa dia pakai skirt pendek Like, benda bodoh. Right? Or we would see the first Malaysian who went up Mount Everest was Dato' Mahendran and who's the other guy? I forgot his name. Two Indian men.
Yeah.
Right? We won't. We will celebrate Malaysian victory.
Yeah.
And I agree that the blocks need to be removed. And if certain policies need to be revised, revise it, because it has to be about the achievements of Malaysia. Because you see, the top global companies are being run by Sundar Pichai or Satya Nadella and a lot more others, regardless of their racial makeup, in a white man's country. Right? Being as they are colonizers and you see they punch down and everything else, but these people came up because of merit, because there's room for growth via merit. I think that has to be a play here, and a politician brave enough needs to break through that.
No, and just to add to that point, because you bring a very good point, you talk about the way we are a very globalized society now, right? This is to Indians, especially Indian youth who are about to enter the job market or in university right now. Stop just hanging out with your own clique. One thing that really benefited me when I was in university was I had a good group of Indian friends, very big group. And, of course, we had a lot of fun together, man. We really had some good times. But I also had a clique of friends who were from different countries, whether from Pakistan, Egypt, all these countries, right? And also local Malaysian, Chinese and all that. Because when you start mixing with other people, that's when you learn how to mix with different people. And that's going to come in handy to you when you go into the job market. Because when you go in the job market, it's not going to be your classroom. It's going to be a mixed bag. It's going to be different races, different nationalities. The world is changing. I know companies that are doing very well in IT in Malaysia who are run 100% by non-Malaysians. The world is changed. We have datos who are not Malaysian.
Yes.
Migrants who have come here and set things up and become, we have businesses coming to Malaysia. You see all the foreign investment. So things are going to become more globalized in this country, right? So Indians, to compete, you need to know how to converse with all these different people. Then you will find success.
Right.
Of course, you have the top 30% Malays who are sent overseas through Mara and all these kind of things. So they come back with a more globalized attitude, right? Because they meet so many races. But Indians need to do that as well here, because there's enough internationals here to do it. And when they do that, it'll be a plus. Perhaps why sometimes Indians suffer when it goes to the working world is because they don't know how to mingle. So they walk into every conversation with an insecurity because I don't know how to talk to this guy. He's not Indian. So when that insecurity is there and people can sense it, they will interpret it as weakness. And so you get labeled as somebody who's maybe not up to the job. But if you can mingle, you can do it, man.
Right.
Yeah, that's just to add to that, man.
So as we round up our session today, a little bit message: be ready to mingle.
Yeah.
Right. No, but yes, a lot of points were talked about here today, and I want to serve this episode as an example of two Indian men with diverse backgrounds, but we can talk about one unifying issue, which is about Indians, without talking about estate and Tamil school. There are other issues. So thank you, Vinod.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
I hope to have you on as guest as I do more episodes. It was a very mind-blowing episode. And would you like to say anything last before I round this up?
No, man, congrats on everything. I love your podcast. I watched the full first episode.
That's both on Spotify and on YouTube.
Nice. Yeah, Spotify one, I watched your YouTube one. Nice. Well done, man. I can't wait for more episodes.
All right. Thank you. So, again, speaking of heroes and leaders, appearing on Vinod's podcast, seeing Vinod do his podcast made me want to do my own podcast. So, heroes doesn't have to be Rajinikanth. Doesn't have to be Vijay. Doesn't have to be Shah Rukh Khan. Right, this kind of things, little steps.
You keep pigeonholing me. What's up with you? From the start, you're like, I usually talk to really A-class people, but this D-class guy, he's here.
I don't mean it that way.
Guess what? I was inspired by him.
That's not what I mean. I mean, in a
it
world
does come off like that.
In a world of podcasts, where you see a Joe Rogan or a Patrick Bet-David,
then we have Vinod, the estate Indian boy.
No, it shows an estate Indian boy can be big.
Can be big. Yeah.
Right.
In the
That's
pants.
what I mean. No disrespect. Right. But thank you, Vinod. It's been
Thanks so much.
fun.
Thanks
So live unscripted. Check out this episode. We're in Teleshot at Empire Podcast Studio, where the quality that you see is the quality that you get. So let us help you broadcast your podcast. Live unscripted, unscripted journeys, unplanned life. I hope to see more of you guys soon. Thank you.